Okay, we're live.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to the listening audience. So I guess our first agenda was Woodstock. Is that correct?
Yes, I sent everybody a reminder just a couple seconds ago as well.
Okay. How do you have them? Okay, you've got them lined up. When they're ready, Liz, you just tell us.
Sure. Let's see who's here. So we're waiting for Senator Clarkson, but we can start with Mr. Blish and Mr. Vandenberg, since that's who's here.
Who can give us the background about this Woodstock problem or issue that we've been dealing with? Who wants to give us some background information? Anthea, you're not on here, are you? No.
So again, I don't know where Senator Clarkson is. I just sent her a reminder, and maybe, I don't know, can you, Mr. Blish or Mr. Vandenberg, or maybe you want to wait, just let us know.
I just jumped in, Senator, so I missed the call.
Yeah. Would you like to tell us what's the issue here?
Yes, sir. So the background is that this was a little bit before my time, but there's a permit that is required on Route 4 between the New Hampshire line and Route 100 South, that for trailer trucks that are 68 feet or longer, but under 75 feet, they need an overlength permit to travel that stretch of Route 4 through Hartford, Woodstock, and Bridgewater are the three municipalities. And so there's a lot of background to it. I think Senator Clarkson, or actually is Mr. Khan on as well? Is he on yet?
Not yet, but I see Senator Clarkson's. I'm just trying to get her on the Zoom.
Okay. I had an issue on my computer, so I had to join on my phone. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. We all have issues every day with something. This is all the world we're living in.
I thought I had it queued up, ready to go, and then this email me said, "Hey, it's about to start," so that I had to jump on my phone.
Well, if we can get Senator Clarkson awake here this morning and see where she is.
She's trying. I think it's my fault, so I'm working on it.
I had a similar issue where it kept telling me I was trying to get into a meeting for 2 days from now.
I noticed there were two different Zoom link addresses. They had different numbers at the end, so I don't.
Yeah, that's the issue. Ta-da! My fault.
No, don't worry about it.
My pass.
There she is.
Hi, my hall pass for Zoom meetings got stuck somewhere. Sorry. Anyway, thank you, Liz.
Senator Clarkson, what is the agenda this morning? What would you like to discuss with us?
Do I have my team? I have my team. I see Robbie, I see Ken, I see Jeff, and then my Senate team. Hi, team. Thank you. Are we ready to go?
Yes, we are.
Oh, good. Thank you, Senate Transportation. It's nice to see this new committee composition.
Well, that's a good start.
Well, it is, and two pillars of
transportation. Right. Okay, here we go. That's good. That scored a little bit there. Okay.
It's good to see you all, and thanks for having me. And it's nice to be doing something other than rental registry this morning. Anyway, thank you for the report that we're testifying about today. If one takes this report on the U.S. Route 4 overlength permit at face value, it suggests that there's a $41,000 cost to the state as a result of the rerouting of about 15,000 overlength trucks per year. Oh, sorry, I'm Allison Clarkson, senator for Windsor County and proud resident of Woodstock, Vermont. So the result for the last 20 years, we've been rerouting about 15,000 overlength trucks as a result of our free permit regulation. But this $41,000 cost is only half the story. The other half of the story is the revenue side of this rather incomplete picture that's painted in this, I think, rather modest report. This free permitting requirement helps keep 15,000 overlength trucks a year from passing through one of Vermont's destination treasures. Identified as one of the most beautiful small towns in America, Woodstock's downtown is negatively impacted by so many overlength trucks. Using 2019 figures, Woodstock's thriving hospitality industry provided almost $4 million a year in direct consumer taxes, meals, rooms, and alcohol. The $41,000 of cost in this report represents just over 1% of this total. If you add in Woodstock's sales taxes, this revenue goes up to over $9 million. Now 41,000 is less than 0.5%. And add in personal income tax and property tax, transfer tax, and the total is close to 18 million. And in 2020, Woodstock contributed over $13 million in net property tax. That's 1.2% of the statewide total, taking this well over $30 million contribution a year to the state coffers. Of course, the limited overlength truck traffic is only one of Woodstock's, limiting that is only one of Woodstock's many charms. But if it represents even a 1% factor, it is offsetting its cost to the state. And that is just Woodstock. All the towns along this Route 4 corridor between the New Hampshire border and Route 100 benefit as well. What benefits Woodstock benefits Vermont. Economics are only a piece of this issue. These trucks pose significant dangers at two key turns in town, and to our pedestrians and to our bicyclists. And solving that problem will cost the state millions of dollars. It's disingenuous to put forward a speculative estimate of the cost of the state without also looking at the revenue impacts. Woodstock is an economic engine for this state, and we'd appreciate you taking this into account as you discuss your response to this report. Thank you for your consideration.
Senator, why is, and you make some good points on the figure, but why is Woodstock any different than any other community in Vermont like Virgins or Pittsford, Brandon? What's the difference? I mean,
that's not my job this morning to talk
okay,
about
all right.
those
No,
other
I'm
towns.
just trying to get to, we discussed this for years. And, when you say overlength trucks, they're not overlength trucks. They're all basically, the 53-foot trailer is basically the same as a 48-foot trailer with the overall length of the truck. I mean, I'm just trying to get a picture of why Woodstock is so different than any other community.
Well, I think Woodstock saw that this was a problem and tried to address it, and perhaps other communities wish they had. These trucks have big impact on the noise level in town. You try eating outside at a cafe in Virgins or in Woodstock. Trucks are tough, and these are 68 to 75-foot length trucks. And I let our head of highway and our police chief address those issues. But I would say that for all of this, it has big impact on the quality of life in all of our towns, and all of us know that.
Well, I'm saying that, but Woodstock has always been singled out as being unique, and I don't know why it's any different than any other community. And when you give the figures about impact, financial impact, that can be said of any community.
No, it couldn't. No,
Why?
I don't think it could. I think Woodstock is really an economic engine for the state in ways that are different.
Economic engine. We talk about Chittenden County always being the economic engine. That doesn't go very far, because the economic engine, they all produce revenue.
Yes,
taxes, and there's so many communities in Vermont. That's why it's always been a question of why Woodstock wants to be singled out of not having any truck traffic.
Well, we aren't. It's Hartford, it's Heartland, it's Woodstock, and Bridgewater.
So
And
if
we choose-
Woodstock was
we-
all right with it, would the others go along with it?
You'd have to hear from the other three towns, but I believe Woodstock is the only one that really enforces it. And our police chief could speak to that.
Okay. right.
My understanding is we're the only ones that enforce it, but it has a benefit to all four of those communities because it goes through the downtowns of every one of them. I mean, except Heartland.
Because I know the bridge that was there, we fixed that bridge a few years ago. That's not an issue anymore. So I don't know what the holdup is in town.
The holdup is we have a really dangerous corner, and that bridge is not fully fixed. If you the Marble Bridge curve,
Okay.
it is improved. There's no question. But I would not say watching the lane crossover on that bridge that it's solved.
So if we solve the bridge problem, you're all right with the traffic?
No, if we we need to solve the hairpin curve at the mobile station on Route 4 East.
If we do all that, you're all right.
Yeah, and then we'd be spending millions of dollars.
Okay, all right. Just want to know what your objection is. All right. Any
But,
questions from the senator before we move on to the police chief or others? Anybody want to get a clearer picture, right? What we're going here? If not, we'll move on to the police chief. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to
Thank
go
you.
back to
All right.
Senate Economic Development. It's
Okay.
great to see you all. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Chief Bobby Blish, obviously with the Woodstock Police Department. I've been a police officer for 32 years. I've been here at Woodstock as a chief for the last 9 years. What I'd like to speak to today deals with the traffic volumes on Route 4 being a major east-west corridor. Woodstock sees over 10,000 vehicles a day traveling along that. Part of the issues we have are with these larger trucks, and the reason why we asked to keep the permit in place to mitigate at least 15,000 or almost 50,000 extra trucks a year is that we have a really sharp turn at the intersection of Route 4 and what's referred to as Heartland Hill. It's the Maple Fields corner. I have a video that I'd like to show. Liz, are you able to show that for me? And I think the committee agreed to watch it. It's and it kind of gives you a flavor of that's just that one corner. There's an additional two corners along the Route 4 section and through the village of Woodstock where trucks have to cross the center line as well. Not to mention that coming through the village, particularly this time of year when cars are parked on both sides of the road, oftentimes smaller cars have to pull over and actually stop to allow these larger trucks to traverse through the heart of the village. So I'm really concerned about the safety aspects of these larger trucks coming through, and our ability to mitigate them is really important to me in terms of safety. Go ahead and start the video, Liz.
Can you see? Okay, let me know.
I can see it. Yeah, now I see it. This is the corner at Maple Fields that I was referring to. That truck is going east, so you can sort of know that your direction that they're traveling. That sign that you see there was struck about 8 times before the business actually had to move it back. So that sign does not exist there anymore.
You're referring to the mobile sign there?
Yes, sir. The mobile gas pricing sign. So that truck went over well into the other oncoming lane. Oftentimes, this happens throughout the day, all day. Cars will literally have to stop, allow a truck to make that turn, or the truck will have to stop and allow vehicles to pass before making that turn.
It looks to me like that sign is in the right of way, is it?
Well, it has been moved back, so it's no longer an issue, but it was times by trucks trying to traverse. So this is an example of what I was mentioning, where you have these extra long trucks that have to sometimes stop or swing well into the other oncoming lane in order to traverse that corner. And that is a 53-foot trailer with an extent. So that's about a 72-foot trailer, truck and trailer.
it's a round corner though. It's not a square intersection. So at least they have the ability if one just gives a right of way. Because I notice if you go down in Burlington on Williston Road, there's some sharper curves than that for where University Mall is. And at least it's a winding curve. I mean, not that it's perfect, but
Right. Well, thank you, Senator. This also is, so this is the west end of the green. These trucks are traveling west. This is the other section where we have difficulty. It's hard to see on the video, but their parking is allowed or starts just about, I don't know, 3 or 4 fence posts to the left. So if a car is parked there, then the trucks sometimes have to swing way out into the lane. And you see that has the swing to make that turn.
May I ask a question, Senator?
yes, go right ahead, Senator Chittenden.
So the trucks are going through there. So the permits aren't stopping the truck traffic. They're just making it more of a nuisance for trucks to come through that haven't checked in with the town.
But I'm sorry, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the permit is obtained through the AOT, their permit. And part of the reason that the permits work, that it mitigates the number of trucks coming through. For the safety reasons, and then our highway superintendent is going to talk a little bit about some of the infrastructure issues that they pose. So that's the whole point of the permits, is to try to mitigate the number of trucks coming through. But
What's their choice? Where do they go if they don't go through there? Where do they have to go?
They're according to the study that was commissioned or that was done, they're traveling up to several different routes, but it's usually like a 5.1 mile extra mileage for them. They'll go up to, I think, 107, or if they're coming from the south, they could get off and take a different route on the south end. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to make a naive comment, and I'd love to hear your reactions to it. Is it Sheriff Blish or Chief Blish?
Chief, sir.
Chief. So I'm interested in new technologies that might mitigate some of these solutions while giving truckers options. Imagine a world, and this technology exists, if there was a camera in that bend right there where truckers were known that if they take that route, they get assessed a fee, and that can go right to this town's coffers to start paying for collecting their money to pay for an improvement to that intersection. And they could then very adequately decide whether or not they want to incur that fee because of the safety concerns, or take an alternative route, pull by plate, or whatever you want to call it. They're using it in Massachusetts and down south. It just seems like what the presentation's been about the permit so far isn't accomplishing the goal affecting safety. It's just a hindrance and a nuisance that seems to be not consistently applied. Would it be a better solution to use economic factors and try to pressure them through a financial fee that they could choose to incur if they want to go through town, or alternatively reroute around the town to avoid that fee?
I think that's an excellent idea. I'm a big proponent of new technology as well, trying to, make life easier for everybody and help them make their decisions. So I definitely would be very interested in seeing something like that. I think that's a fair way to do it as well. It's giving them the choice to these operators. Although the fee itself is not necessarily onerous to obtain, there's still, or not the fee, did I say fee? I mean, the permit itself is not onerous to obtain, but at the same time, we do require it, and some of the trucking agencies choose not to for whatever reason. One of the things that was brought up before, was terms of, from AOT anyways, was, well, there's a cost to us for administering the issuing of these permits. And then that's true, except that in terms of mitigating that cost, I will say that, and it's in the report that you all have seen, we write about an average of 125 tickets a year for overlength trucks, and the state does get a fair amount of that.
So
So
far,
just
just
an
the pros.
take the average of the ticket of $392. It can go up, but the average is $392. And they take about $109.50 of that goes to the state. So it's about 13,000 or so to the state for us enforcing this statute. So I think that offsets any cost the AOT might experience. But that is am I still on?
Yeah, you're still on.
Yes. Sorry, everything went blank. My apologies.
That's all right.
So what I'd like to, that's my presentation. I would like to turn it over to our highway superintendent because I think he has some really interesting
Good.
information. Well,
All right. Okay, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and all the senators.
Good morning.
I'm Ben Vandenberg. I'm the highway superintendent for the town of Woodstock. I've been asked to testify to the substructure of Route 4 through the village as well as down to the corner where you saw the videos of the trucks. You ask what's different about Woodstock than other towns, Senator, and this is, I think, a very important thing to consider. It is a unique situation in that the substructure of that section of road is the old concrete road. In time, it's been paved over. What's happened is due to the heavy pedestrian in the village area and down through that section, we use quite a bit of salt to keep it in very good shape, actually. What's happened is that salt, when it gets wet, becomes a brine. It's seeped down through the pavement and it's deteriorating this concrete. And what happens when the salt deteriorates the concrete, it becomes the consistency of almost like a gypsum. It's not a solid base. The purpose of this permit and mitigating truck traffic is to minimize the damage and the potholes created from all these trucks. All vehicles create potholes, but the heavier and bigger the trucks and the more of them, the more damage I see. I've actually had a year where VLCT came down into the town, made us come up with a plan to mitigate the potholes because they were so severe. I think this permit limiting trucks helps reduce the damage to the roads and the amount of repairs I have to do. The other towns, and I don't know, they may or may not, so I can't speak to that, but we incur the cost of this maintenance as well. So by allowing all these extra trucks to come through, it's also creating a lot more work and a lot more cost for us. So I'm agree with Senator Chittenden that if new technology could incur some revenue for those damages, I would be interested in seeing how that worked. But my point at the end of the day is that more trucks mean more damage, and more damage is more money, more safety issues, to the point I've had to go down and sign that area due to the heavy potholes. If we have a lot of wet weather, be it rain, melting, whatever, the hydraulic pressures in the road will tear it up in a hurry. So that's what I see.
Questions?
Thank you, Ken. Mr. Vandenberg, I
Yes,
agree.
Senator Kitchell.
You can see from our questions, the issue that we're trying to sort out is the unique conditions and what would make Woodstock different than any other village related on a major east-west or north-south artery. And any of us who have Route 5, Route 7, Route 4 is one, but Route 2. And so part of the reason for this is the other side of the question, which gets into economics, and that is what this one segment of road means relative to the delivery of goods, services, and the trucking industry. So that, I don't know if you listened last year, I'm sure you did, in terms of if everybody got their permit, the volume would be no different. It would all be permissible. But the fact that it causes a rerouting, more mileage, but also fines from on businesses that would be not familiar with this section of the road being requiring a permit. Not that you can't use it, but you can use it with a permit. And so that is really behind the questions, because we are hearing from the trucking industry that this is really of concern to them. And people who don't know or unsuspecting get hit with very large fines when they could get a for nothing cost permit. So the fundamental issue is to fully understand why this one very unique condition exists, and why it should continue to exist in light of the other testimony we're hearing from, particularly from our trucking industry representatives who have come before us to express their concerns. So I just want to state that has been part of what we're trying to sort out here, and some of the questions are really related to why something very unique, very special, in light of the fact that I live in Danville and I know what it's like to have quite a bit of truck traffic, and having it reduced does improve quality. But it's why is Woodstock, or this section of Route 4, because it's more than Woodstock, have this status, and why it should continue relative to the other testimony talking about the cost, the disadvantage, and the concerns that it raises from the companies that are providing the goods that are necessary for Vermont. So that's why we had the discussion last year, and we asked for the report to help us understand. We know that there are a lot of segments of old roads that have these cement sections. We know everything that you've talked about in the concerns. I guess it all is then with that, what is the unique quality around the section of road and the continuation of this permit requirement for Woodstock. And that's really the question that the committee is struggling with.
Yeah, I think you're correct there, because the other communities in Vermont would feel the same way. It's we have trucks from all over the United States that deliver goods to Vermont, and yet they're hit with a great big fine, knowing that that's the only community that's different. I take, for example, Shelburne Road. That used to be cement concrete, and they had to tear that up because it was deteriorating, and now it's all blacktop. But I know of very little highways left that are concrete. But it's just trying to explain to the truckers why Woodstock is so different than any other community. If every other community took the same stance as Woodstock, I don't know what would happen to our industry about trucking goods to Vermont. Do we have someone? Let's see.
Senator Mazza.
Yes, Senator Ingalls.
And it's not like this road is just a road that the truckers have chosen to for their convenience. It's the road that the state's pointed to go east and west. A lot like what Route 2 is to Danville. And a lot of this traffic is getting diverted on roads that probably isn't as great as a road to handle this truck traffic. The state hasn't put as much money into those other roads to support the amount of increased traffic that's meant to be there. I mean, Route 4 has had millions and millions and millions of dollars spent on it to make it a viable throughway to get from east to west. And the fact that there's a town in the middle of it that's there There's many towns in there that probably wish that there was less traffic on it. I'm struggling with why Woodstock is unique to all the other towns along that road.
If I may.
Yes,
interject.
right ahead. Thank you.
I think there's no big elephant in this room, but a conglomerate of smaller ones. Between the safety of the turns, the substructure of the road, the rattling of foundations along it, as Ms. Kitchell referred to, there are a whole host of issues that Woodstock, I think, in history stepped up to try to mitigate and minimize. So I think looking at this from your perspective, I understand your points. I come from a trucking family, so I understand theirs. And in all of that, I do feel that it is a unique situation if you put everything together that other towns may or may not deal with one or two of the smaller elephants, but not all of them combined.
Questions?
Sure,
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question is, what would Woodstock do if everybody got the permit? And we hear this 15,000 truck that's being diverted. I can't remember if that was in the report that we had, but just whatever the number is, let's say 5,000 or 20,000. The question that I wonder is, since we're not prohibiting it, we're just trying to, or Woodstock is trying to prohibit, get less trucks. What would happen if everybody just got the permit? What would Woodstock do?
I think the answer is, obviously, if everyone had the permit, then the trucks would be able to travel that road. I don't know the answer to that question, but the fact is, oftentimes these trucks will go around Woodstock, and that's what mitigates the truck traffic through Woodstock for the reasons myself and Mr. Vandenberg have mentioned. One of our other witnesses, Senator, might have a better answer for you. And this is our Mr. Khan, who's the chairperson of our village trustees and 50-year resident store owner, and he may be able to shed some light on the situation, on why we feel that the permit is important to us as well.
Okay, it's Mr. Collins. Is he with you this morning? We'd like to hear from him. Sure.
He should be on. Jeff, are you here?
Mm-hmm. He is.
Okay, go ahead. Welcome.
He's trying to unmute.
Okay.
I don't know if he can hear us. Can you hear it? There he goes. You
You want to
unmuted.
see if I can unmute you, Mr. Khan? Let me see if I can do it.
Please. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, turn up, maybe on your computer, there might be on the bottom right corner, something that has volume.
Can you hear me now?
Need a little louder.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We're
Is that
getting there. That's
Okay.
better.
Right. Thank you. I'm sorry for that.
I don't know if you heard Senator Pertzler's question. Did you hear his question or no?
I did. I've heard
Okay.
the
Sure.
entire
Okay.
discussion.
All right. If you'd like to comment, we'd appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I'd like to make a few points and
Sure.
and respond as well. As Chief Blish said, I've been a resident for about half a century in Woodstock, and I own a business right on Route 4 in the heart of the village, which is a very tight, congested area in the business district of old buildings and homes. The building I am in, which I'm part owner of, is a pre-Civil War building. When the trucks go by, myself and my customers feel every single one of them when the larger ones go by. We've lived with that for a long time. In the 80s, late 80s, we started seeing a large increase in truck traffic through Woodstock. That continued into the 90s. we felt a mitigation, we felt a rollback of that somewhat when this permitting process went into effect. Why trucks choose not to use the free permit is beyond me, but those that do are ignoring signs on Route 89 when they get off to get on Route 4 or on Route 4 itself from the west. The free permitting process has not stopped truck traffic. We have a lot of trucks coming through town. In the past 2 years, anecdotally, most folks recognize that the truck traffic has increased. So there's not like we're not having a lot of trucks through town. We sure are. But going by the report's numbers, and the reports say that this is probably about 41 trucks a day that were missing because of the free permits. That's where that 15,000 figure comes in, senators. That's a year. 41 times 365 is about 15,000. So my building actually has cracks in the foundation. The buildings next to me have cracks in their foundation. The homes do. I received, just as a village trustee, I received complaints from homeowners along Route 4. My home shakes. My foundation is not secure. Adding 15,000 more trucks of this size a year will certainly exacerbate that problem and make it worse. It's just a fact that will happen. Now going by their own statements to your committee from the recent meeting this month, the truck industry is doing very well in Vermont, which is great. I mean, we all want the truck industry to do great, and we see all those trucks going by. But the businesses in Woodstock, the infrastructure in Woodstock with that road is not doing great. Adding 15,000 more trips a year simply will make the problem worse. So I would certainly hope that we could leave this permitting process in place. It's not the problems, as our highway superintendent Ken Vandenberg said. The problems are unique here in Woodstock if you put together all of the elements of safety and infrastructure, and the tight nature of our village. Now, so I would ask that this be left in place. It can only help. There are plenty of trucks coming through, and they will increase even with this free permitting in place. But if you choose to recommend repealing these free permits, I would ask that you please fix the problem at the corner of Maplefield, which is Heartland Road and Route 4, which is such a bad issue. Fix that first and then remove that permitting process. That's the only thing that would make sense if you go in that direction. We are very concerned about the safety there, and increasing more trucks will only increase that concern. So
how many accidents are recorded in that corner?
Involving the trucks going over the sidewalk and
no accidents affecting another vehicle.
Thank God we haven't had any human problems in terms of people being injured to date. We've come close.
Oh, yeah.
I've come close
in every downtown.
I've had to pull over many times to let a truck go by. So if we want to add to the probability that there'll be an accident, add 15,000 more truck trips a year. I
look at Virgins and I see what they're on a hill, and all the hundreds of trailers a day go through there with Jake brakes going down through and back and forth. You talk about truck traffic, Virgins would be the place to really complain about truck traffic, and yet we don't hear anything.
Well, I can't answer to that. I can answer that we have an entire town that's having a problem, and that everyone is concerned, and that for safety as well as the damage to the roads, which costs the state a lot of money. The state is about to grind and repave. We cannot fix the concrete problem. Yeah. We've gone down that road. So the state's about to start that project this spring. It's 8 years since the state last did that. We are constantly spending money fixing constant potholes in Woodstock. Adding more truck traffic than is necessary, because the trucks that are choosing not to come through Woodstock are choosing that on their own, and they're traveling an extra 5 miles in that choice. But it's just doesn't make sense to take the permitting away. But if you do, please fix the problem first before you take the permitting away. Also, Senator Chittenden's suggestion, I just love that. I hadn't thought of that, nor have I heard anyone else bring something like that up. There might be some other solutions that we could pursue there.
Senator Muslin.
Questions?
Senator
Yes,
Muslin.
Senator Chittenden.
So thank you for that, Jeffrey. And for what it's worth, I completely support what that means from a new senator, fixing this intersection. It seems like a trouble spot that's worth of our attention. And I'd love to hear more from VTrans as to what the timeline is to give it the tender loving care that it needs. I love that you also like this idea about using tolls. I'd hate to be known as the toll guy, but it seems like a very effective way to steer and to also balance or capture the external costs these trucks are emitting to the town by reducing their quality of life. And that way the trucking companies can choose if they want to either pay the fee to go through to save the time or reroute based on it to avoid the fee. Thus, that and if they do choose to go through it, that generates the money that can either improve an alternate route or improve this intersection. So I thank you for that endorsement of that idea. I'm the new guy around here, so I'm glad I'm not talking crazy. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, Senator Ingalls.
Going back to something that Senator Pertwee touched on, I don't see if everybody got the permit and those trucks were allowed to go through there, how that would solve any problems. I just don't. I mean, the arguments that you guys are making doesn't solve any problems if everybody got the permit. And to answer to your question is why doesn't everybody get the permit? Is because the country is a big country. There's a lot of trucks that are coming from all over the country, and they just don't know about this one section of road that is requiring a permit to go through. And there's I don't know how long Route 4 is, but it's quite a long road east to west. They just don't know about that permit. But if everybody did get that permit and the extra 15,000 trucks were allowed to go through there, and for you to say that you'd be happy about that, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that if everybody got that permit, that everybody was going to be happy about it and that it solves any problems that what you're bringing up.
But Senator, those trucks are self-selecting to not get that permit. And they're still reaching their destinations. So
I don't know that they're self-selecting. I think the people that are any prudent person to get a free permit would get a free permit if they were aware of that permit. I would be interested to see the numbers of local trucking companies who are in violation are getting stopped and getting heavily fined. I think the vast majority of those trucks coming through there are probably not aware of that permit.
Well, the report indicates that of the reduction since the permitting process went into place. And so if you go by the study itself, there are about 15,000 fewer truck trips a year with this permitting process in place. So that speaks to itself.
So if they all got the permit and they all went through there, you'd be fine.
But they're not choosing to do that. That's why.
But if they did do that and they all got the permit, Woodstock wouldn't have an issue.
We would have an issue, but we wouldn't be able to do anything about it except spend more money and have more damage to our buildings and safety.
But no accidents have been reported or no crashes have been reported on the corner. That's a danger. One of the signs that was there in the video was in the state right of way. I think that corner is easily fixable, given a little attention. I'm yet to see. I just see a double argument going here that it really isn't a lot of the issues that are being brought up. It's just they just don't. Woodstock doesn't care to have Woodstock and the other towns doesn't care to have trucks going through that section of the road. Is what I see the argument being.
We have trucks going through, Senator. We have a lot of them going through. We're not going to stop that, nor are we asking to stop that. We're asking to help mitigate the situation, which is a bad one. And that's where we're asking for your assistance. The current system does help mitigate it. But it doesn't stop truck traffic, nor are we trying to.
Is Bill Smith on with us this morning?
Yes.
Yes. Would you like to comment, Bill?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, Bill Smith, lobbyist for the Vermont Truck and Bus Association. I've listened to the folks from Woodstock. I understand their concerns. I live in a small town here in Northfield. We have a lovely downtown. Probably not the economic engine that Woodstock is, fair to say. But Northfield on Route 12 is not on a principal arterial route in the national highway system. Route 4 is the significant route between I-90 east-west and Route 2 east-west. It connects Portsmouth, New Hampshire on the coast to Albany and the Port of Albany in New York. Trucks run over Route 4 quite frequently. It used to be what was on the truck route we used to have until 2009. And this report has shown that there are significant state added costs to essentially squeezing the balloon here. We're taking truck traffic and we're squeezing it off to 100 and 107 and then down 103 if you go south. And yes, that has a cost to individual trucking companies. The report showed about an estimated 81,000 miles a year. For a frame of reference, with a truck getting generally 6.5 to 7 miles per gallon, that's another 12,000 gallons of fuel a year, which does have an environmental impact. It does have a cost impact to these trucking companies. Purchase of diesel fuel, you're looking at roughly $30,000 a year added cost to the industry as a whole. In addition to that, on these matters, the state costs on these other roads are more versus Route 4 being slightly less because of the lower truck traffic. So again, it's this classic squeezing of the balloon and making a policy choice to do that. And if the policy choice of the legislature is that it wants to preserve the economic engine that is Woodstock at the expense of Bethel and Ludlow and Pittsfield and Chester and Rockingham, that's a valid policy choice. We don't stand in the way of that. But we've seen in the last 20 years, trucks be pulled over. If they don't have this free permit in the cab of the truck, their fine is $397 the first time around in 2 years. And if you get more fines within a 2-year period, it goes up to about 800 and then about 1,100 on those. So trucking companies, I think, usually learn the first time. I would hope that they would. I get calls occasionally from somebody that's in the Vermont trucking industry saying, I got a fine on Route 4, what do I do? And it comes down to that they're not necessarily aware of it. There are signs coming in from the west in Bridgewater and from the east in Heartland. And I think that you've seen those pictures of those signs over the years. The concerns raised by the trucking industry are, assuming they see the sign, and that's a fair assumption, where do they pull over and how do they get a permit if they don't have one? The safe places to pull over or turn around a truck if you need to go around are not there. And making them there would be functionally impossible, I think, in the Route 4 corridor. The room to turn around a tractor trailer is significant, and that can be a problem. So they can't get this permit online when they're sitting there because they need to have it in the cab of the truck, a paper permit. I heard the discussions with Woodstock about the weights of the truck, the length of the truck. I can tell you these trucks don't weigh any different with a 53-foot trailer than a 48-foot trailer. They're permitted for up to 80,000 pounds. If they either go over that weight or over 75 feet overall length, they need a special overweight overlength permit, which is a different matter, and they need to get that. These trucks have the same axle configuration as one hauling a 48-foot trailer. They have the same wheelbase of 41 feet from the rear axle center to the kingpin on the tractor. So the turning radius is the same. The weight is no heavier. The number of axles is no different. These trucks have no more loading overall as a truck than a truck that would happen to have a 48-foot trailer. Now, the 48-foot trailer has generally gone the way of the dodo in this industry over the last 30 years. It was 20 years ago when that was starting to be recognized in Vermont and our neighboring states to go to a 53-foot trailer. Why would they do that? Well, customers want it. If you have a light cargo, like say coffee beans, you can fill that 53-foot trailer full and not have it reach 80,000 pounds. So it makes sense to our customers to use 53-foot trailers. It makes sense to our truckers to use 53-foot trailers because the axle, the wheelbase is the same, the weight's the same. So if you don't know you need to get this free permit, the penalties are substantial. And when we're looking at the study, one of the things that my members wanted to know was, how do you document that there's a lot of issues on Route 4 that are exactly the same in any other town in Vermont? If you look at Route 2, look at Route 5 going through Lindenville, look at 107 where you come into Route 12 in the town of Bethel. I mean, there are some situations that are just the very nature of our New England towns that are shared with Woodstock. And what the report says on page 26 is that this is not unique to the Route 4 corridor or particularly acute here. So, you know, looking at the video of Heartland Hill and River Street, I noticed that, you know, several of the trucks were oversized, overweight trucks. You know, 6-axle logging truck, for example, is not subject to this permit at all. So this permit wouldn't even deal with the solution of having a 6-axle logging truck making too wide of a turn. So should we look at Heartland Hill intersection? Absolutely. I mean, no one in the industry is going to try to tell you that we don't want safety and we don't want to listen to the concerns of the public as we come through their towns. As far as how you pay for that, I'm sure I don't need to call up some of my members to know what they feel about tolls and dedicated amounts of money for a specific road out of the state coffers. I think that ignores the policy responsibilities of AOT and the legislature in determining what road and what intersection needs to be addressed on a larger scale. And I think that's what this really comes down to, is the larger scale concern of the state and the folks that receive the benefit of my members' deliveries versus one town. And if the interests of the one town are determined to be more important than the rest, then that's a policy decision I would take issue with, and which is why we're here. I guess I would say that, you know, the awareness of needing a permit is shown to not be there if you've got a significant number of tickets that are being written for folks for not having the permit in their truck. They're not all out-of-staters, but I would feel safe in estimating that most of them are out-of-state trucking companies who will never know that this permit is needed. And what does that mean for hauling goods into Vermont and through Vermont? It's more time. You get pulled over by a police officer and they want to look at your truck, the clock's still ticking in your logbook, as far as I know. And there's a finite amount of time to deliver items. And if this permit has no criteria to issue it, it doesn't cost anything. But if you don't have it and you don't know, you get stopped and you get a ticket. How is that helping commerce in the state and in our region? And that's where the industry comes down on this. I do thank you folks for taking a look at it and having the study done. I think that fundamentally the interests of Woodstock and the interests of the other towns to which this balloon will be squeezed are fundamentally irreconcilable. And yes, I ask that you make a choice about that in one direction, and I thank you. I see that Senator Ingalls has a question for me, Mr.
Senator Ingalls, go right ahead.
I'd just like to ask Chief Blish, how do you know which trucks have permits and have you not? I mean, how many trucks do you stop in a year to determine whether they have the permit or not? I could imagine that if you're issuing the type of tickets that you have, the vast majority of trucks that you have are probably have the permits. I mean, how do you pick which truck to stop to check to see if they have the permit? There's not an outside sticker on the door. They have to have the permit inside the truck. So who do you know who to stop?
So obviously we know many of the Vermont companies, we already know they have the permit. We've stopped them before to check their permit. They've had them. So we know the companies that typically traverse Route 4. So obviously we're not going to stop them. If we see a truck come through that looks to overlength to us, and so obviously if it has a sleeper cab, for instance, with a 53-foot bed, we know that truck is probably over 68 feet. So that helps us determine if we're going to stop that truck and check its permit. It's not uncommon for us to stop a truck that's not necessarily a Vermont hauler and find that they have the permit. But we also, of course, stop trucks that are from out of state and they don't have the permit. So that's essentially that's the best way I can answer your question, Senator.
So how many trucks
have ID as the permit, and then obviously we can stop trucks at random in order to check the permit.
So how many are you stopping a year, would you say?
On average, about 125 tickets are issued a year, but I don't know. I honestly don't have the number for you in terms of how many we actually do stop. We don't, if they have the permit, they're just sorry to bother you, have a nice day, and we allow them to continue. And so I don't have a record on that in front of me, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Bill?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would say that when you look at the trucks that are affected, it's a fairly narrow description, but it applies to a heck of a lot of tractor trailers. A truck between 68 feet and 75 feet long overall is what we're talking about here. And that configuration is essentially only a tractor trailer with a 53-foot trailer behind it versus a tractor trailer with a 48-foot trailer behind it, which again is, particularly over the last 20 years, has not been something that people want us to use. So this is the tractor trailer with a 53-foot trailer behind it. And you may have seen it, you folks may have seen it. There is a big 53 feet on the upper left-hand corner of the trailer as you look at it from the roadside. So you don't need to eyeball it. It'll say 53 feet on it generally if it's a 53-foot trailer. So our concern has just been the turning radius is no different. The weight's no different. It's the standard of the industry in hauling, and it needs a special permit on about 32 miles of road in the state of Vermont. That's a concern for us that's been longstanding. We've expressed those concerns. I am glad that the committee is taking this up and that you had the report done, which largely confirms what the industry members are telling me. So,
okay, we got to end this discussion because we're going over time. We'll continue this discussion at a later time. We got a lot of information this morning to digest. It's all good information, and I can assure you we'll continue this at a later time. But right now we have to move on. It is 10 o'clock and we're 15 minutes into our next meeting. I knew we'd have an interesting discussion, but it's very, very informative. So with that, we're going to end this section and move on to our next subject. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate everybody for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, Liz?
You bet.
You're muted, Liz. I think it would
Good
be.
point. Yeah. Now, of course, Anthea has disappeared. Let me see if I can track her down. But
She's
oh, she is. Oh, yay.
Senator Mazza, you want Anthea to go with the walk
Sure.
through the language?
Yep.
Which language would you like me to walk through?
Well, I assumed we were on the TARP issue, but maybe there's something else. I don't know.
No, that's fine.
I think we were on boats again. You have Sergeant Carbo with you, and I can get the TARP language.
Okay.
Anthea, we'll leave it up to you to put us through wherever you like.
That's a lot of power.
I know, that's right. Well, we know where the power is.
How about, since you have Sergeant Carbo with you, and I don't know what his schedule is like,
Sure.
you hear from him on boats, and that'll give me time to get the TARP language.
All right, okay. Okay, where'd we leave off yesterday with that, Anthea? What section we're
We
on?
had questions for the sergeant around the boat. He sent an email, but he could
Yes.
let us
Okay.
know about the sound. You know, we talked about the decibels of motors and if there was a similar issue with the snowmobile.
Manufacturers. Okay, with snowmobile. Okay. Sergeant, are you with us this morning?
I am. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Okay, you probably know what we're after, and if you could give us a little update. There was a lot of issues yesterday to take up, and they said they had a lot of came from your division, which that's your section. So maybe there'll be some questions for you, and whatever, fill us in, whatever you can help us on. Okay.
Yes, I will. I apologize for my appearances. I'm under quarantine, and I've got others here in the area, so I have to have this
Well, you're sending
this
a good
wrap
example.
on.
There you go.
Apologize.
That's all right.
So the question that was posed to me yesterday, I just unfortunately I don't have much I can help you with there. I'm sorry.
Senator Perchlik, you got the question?
Well, the basic question, the one that Anthea emailed you that you emailed back, Sergeant, and that was one, if you had any issues about the, whatever it is, 40 pages of changes to the vessels and motorboat laws, because we didn't, you know, we don't have the expertise other than Senator Ingalls as our boat owner expert. But so we wanted to hear from somebody like you that is out in the field dealing with this to make sure that you were okay with all those changes was one. And then two, specifically about the text in there about decibel limits for motorboats.
Yes, the decibel limit I'm not familiar with. I actually did some research this morning, and it appears as though nationwide there are some states that have one and some states that don't. So I do not believe it is a Coast Guard mandate under CFR that we have to mirror. It would take some more research to confirm that, but in my experience is that if it's a federal mandate, that all the states would have it. I don't think it's a coincidence that the decibel limit mirrors that of snowmobiling, and I suspect that there again was some sort of nationwide look at what's an acceptable noise level. So I don't have anything that I can offer, unfortunately, as to, you know, how we got to an 82 decibel limit on boats.
And in your email, you also expressed the same kind of concern we heard with snowmobiles, is that it was basically unenforceable, right?
Well, there are challenges. Yes, the way it was currently written, it talked about a decibel limit. You know, it referenced normal operating conditions, yet I don't see where that's identified. It's been a discussion through the vast Governor Council meeting for the last several years, and finally I provided some language to VASS that was similar to surrounding states and how they address the issue, and trying to remove the decibel limit. It's very difficult to measure that. You know, a normal operating condition, I suppose, would have a snowmobile driving by you at 50 feet and trying to measure that. It's extremely difficult. So we looked at some other ways that would just simplify the matter.
Okay, one of the things that was brought up yesterday also, I represent thousands of boats in my district here, the marinas. All these changes to the boating laws and statutes, is there any one group that looks at them and says it's all right or it's not good, or is it not going to cause much of a stir at all? Everybody's acknowledging what it is, because I don't have any idea what all this means. I know you folks work on a lake all the time, so you know exactly what and I understand a lot of it's Coast Guard regulation. Did they say Coast Guard yesterday? Was that? I thought it was. Just so if someone asked me or any other member, why are you doing this? We would say it's because, and that's the only concern I had.
Yes.
It probably won't affect anybody to notice it.
Yes, Senator. The basically we have a site visit from the Coast Guard regarding our recreational boating safety federal dollars grant that we receive, and they identified in 2018 some changes they wanted to see to greater reflect our language to the Code of Federal Regulations for the boating. Some of our stuff was we measured out in feet and they measure in meters, and we were off our measurements. Some of it was just cleanup language. There was a lot more changes that were made than Coast Guard had asked for, but that was just more, I think the editors, once in a while, they like to go through and just clean up language that's unnecessary. So a lot of that was done. I don't see anything there's a couple exceptions. The majority of the language cleanup is all surrounding lights and equipment, streamlining some of that stuff. Anthea did the work on that and cleaned up all of that stuff to compress and better put us in compliance and mirroring federal regulations. There were two sections specifically that are a change. One was the reciprocity under 3307A. So if you're a registered boater in the state of New Hampshire and you have your boat in Vermont waters for 31 days, you'd be required to contact Mike Smith at DMV and get an additional validation sticker. CFR is actually 60 days. So we were 30 days short. So we extended that to 60 days, or we're requesting that change to 60 days to put us in compliance with the federal regulations. So it is a change for boaters, but it's a bigger, better change for them. They would not need to seek this validation sticker for 60 days instead of the 30 that it is now. The other significant change was increasing the dollar amount in regards to collision reporting. We're currently sitting at $100, and for any of you boaters on the call here, that's you don't do much damage to your boat before you hit $100. So I look to increase that to $2,000 to be in line with what our motor vehicle standards are. I think that was as well as what other states are falling in at. So, and again, that also kept us in compliance with CFR.
Well, you do a great job on the lake for us. I know that the state police Marine Division does a great job. Yeah, well, that's good to know because and most of the manufacturers are putting this equipment on as it comes from the factory anyway, right? So they don't have to, boaters don't have to change.
Yes, these are.
Okay. So it's
no, and there was no real change. It was just the language, it initially didn't flow well with the auditors that came and looked through this stuff. And we went back and forth for quite some time on trying to get
it's good to know that if someone does ask us, we can say, well, this is the reason. It's nothing that we did ourselves. It was something that had to happen and for safety reasons and everything. And if you see Senator Engel's boat, he has a captain and a skipper and a cook and everybody. It's the biggest boat on the lake up there. So Mike's gonna check it out. Any questions this morning? Any further questions? Did it clear up? Yes, Senator Kitchell.
Well, and I guess the answer is no. We were thinking or hoping that there might be something as it talks about the noise level, some certification that comes from the manufacturer that's comparable to what we have for snow machines, and which is what we're replacing the decibels with. But there's nothing, there's not an industry standard or certification in place that would be comparable to apply to motorized to watercraft, motorized watercraft.
Actually, this morning, what I did find on a simple Google search through the NMMA. And I'll try and find out what that is, what agency that is, but it's the sound level measurement standards. I think that's the Marine Mechanics Association. And they recommend, there is a stationary sound levels. And I believe this is through the manufacturing industry. And it does talk about underwater exhaust generally being between 65 and 75. So there is an agency standard, so to speak, out there, I think, in regards to the manufacturers.
So maybe with more information that could be helpful in trying to figure out how to proceed here with the motorboats at this point.
Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So Sergeant Carbo, thank you for being here today. I guess one of my questions might have inspired your invitation. And I just, as I look to understand how things work through the Senate, I keep reflecting on my experience at the University of Vermont in our faculty Senate. And I've just found that if we don't adequately reach out to all constituencies affected by things being spoken to, it's likely to get derailed or slowed down at the last minute. Do you have any advice for us as we try to bring this to the floor of the Senate to ensure that we did a good effort at reaching out to the boating community to make sure that we heard from them if they have any concerns about these technical changes?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, organization, I'm not even sure what the organization is, that's sort of outside of my scope of what I do, but there's got to be a boat manufacturers that represent Vermont. You know, I mean, I deal with the dealers on a regular basis and vendors for things, but I don't deal with sort of, I don't know if you refer to them as lobbyist groups or things like that try and keep an eye out for this stuff, for these sorts of changes. That's well outside of my basis of knowledge, and I'm not sure who those groups would be.
Is there an association group that they belong to, the association, the boat dealers? They don't have anything like that, do they? To your knowledge?
I'm not sure. I could
didn't
check
know,
with.
I represent half a dozen of them around here, but I don't know. You know, they've never come to me as a group or so with any issue. So it would, that's Senator Chittenden, that's a good idea, because whoever reports it would like to say, you know, we've heard that the dealers are not opposed or whatever. It would be great to know that. Yeah. Okay, we'll have to work on that side of it then. Yeah. Any other questions right now from this issue? Are they all covered? Anybody? Okay, well, thank you very much for showing up this morning with us. And Anthea, anything you'd like to add at this time?
The only thing I have on the boat language is Senator Kitchell had asked about the racing shells and skulls and why we were including that definition. And I did a little bit of digging, and Sergeant Carbo and I are going to look into it further. That language was added, and I can pull up the bill in 2001. And based on the Act summary, it was to make it so that if all of the occupants of a sculling vessel were over the age of 12, they didn't need to wear life jackets. I think there already is language that only requires life jackets if you're over the age of 12 to begin with. The requirement is carrying the personal flotation devices on the vessel. I think there's probably a cleaner way of doing that, similar to the way I think it's sailboards are specifically exempted from the PFD requirement and then addressed in a different way. So it might make sense to do that as some cleanup, but the only instances in the chapter that uses racing shell or rowing scull is in the carve out from vessel. And based on our research so far, it was a 2001 change so that personal flotation devices didn't need to be worn.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that?
Sure, go ahead.
I did there's another section in the law under the distance requirement. It'd be 3311. If I have the right section here. There was a couple of years ago, we had an issue on one of the, is it Hosmer Lake Hosmer or Hosmer
Oh,
Pond.
oh, yes.
There was, okay,
Water
and there was water skiing taking place, and there's some racing skulls that moved into the area, and we're doing a lot of training there. And under these definitions and the exception, under the distance requirement, where we currently, Vermont says that two vessels operating, amongst each other have to be with 200 feet apart. The racing skulls or shells and skulls were exempt from that. So technically, we ran into some issues where technically these motorboats could ride within 200 feet of these because they were not considered vessels.
So that could be a further reason to not deal with it. If it's just meant to address the personal flotation device, is not dealing with it in the definition of vessels. Sergeant Carbo, do you agree with that?
I'm not sure why it's exempt from the definition of vessel. If exemptions want to be made for life jacket wear, which I would argue against, I think it's best to make the exemption in that life jacket section versus just saying that racing shells or rowing skulls are not vessels, because it opens them up to any other exemption, such as the distance requirement.
That one of the bigger violations on the lake is a lack of carrying enough safety jackets or on the boat, or no?
We see a great deal of compliance.
Well, that's good.
Generally speaking, in the motorized boat industry, the paddle boards and the kayaks are still lagging in being compliant there as much as we'd like to see them. And unfortunately, a lot of our fatalities on the water are involving those small, the kayaks and with no PFDs.
Wow, it's interesting. Okay, any other questions from the sergeant? Oh, good. We've covered it. Thank you for appearing this morning. It helped us finalize this section. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What's next, Anthea?
Senator Perchlik, would you like to have me walk through your TARP language?
Yes, please.
Okay, Liz, do I have sharing access? It looks like I do not.
You do not. One
Perfect.
moment.
Why don't you tell the committee what your proposal is doing?
Yeah,
Let me just,
I reached out to Anthea to ask about what the condition of laws in Vermont were for securing loads or slippage. There's different terms used to deal with, and something falling out of a truck onto the road. There is some language in the statute that Anthea will explain, but other states do a lot more in trying to prevent this. And then I have a constituent that is with us today that has had some specific issues with it. That is why it was first addressed to me, and thought that this might be something the committee would want to hear about, this problem that we're having and the kind of the lack of clarity we have in the statutes on how to deal with it.
Okay, how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, if Anthea could just explain her research and what she came up with as a proposed language to kind of have in the statute a requirement to make sure that things aren't falling out of trucks, that would be great. She could explain it much better than I could.
Okay, go right ahead.
Sure thing. So what I have up on the screen, which I hope you can all see, is what would be an amendment to 23 VSA section 1454. Section 1454 is what is frequently cited to in terms of saying that individuals who are operating vehicles need to have the load be secured. In looking to what other states have in their tarpage or slippage laws, specifically our three neighboring states, all of them had more elaboration, usually in the context of if the load was something loose. So in looking at what other states have done and some of the exemptions that Senator Perchlik thought made sense for a state like Vermont. This is the language that we worked on. So a person shall not operate a motor vehicle nor draw a trailer or semi-trailer containing any loose substances on a highway unless the motor vehicle or trailer has a cover, tarpaulin, or other device of a type and specification approved by the commissioner. So giving the commissioner of motor vehicles the authority to approve what is actually covering vehicles that contain loose substances, but it needs to completely close in any openings on the motor vehicle, trailer, or semi-trailer when it's in operation so as to prevent any falling of loose substances from the vehicle. But if the vehicle load is arranged so that no loose substances could fall from or blow out of the vehicle, then a covering is not necessary. Some states will have specific distance requirements below the edge of the trailer, but this is leaving a little more discretion there in terms of what the load might be, loose versus rocks or something more weighted down. But then there are some exceptions, and the exceptions are for sand, salt, brine, water, and other substances that are being intentionally dropped for purpose of securing traction or cleaning and maintaining the highway. There's an exemption for a farmer transporting uncovered farm products or materials, but the farmer is not relieved of the duty to exercise reasonable care to prevent hazardous spillage and hazards to other users of the highway. And then there's an exemption for the construction and maintenance equipment that is operated without a covering, provided that it is within a properly designated work zone. So those would be the three exemptions. The idea here is adding a little bit more elaboration beyond just the general you need to secure loads, language that already exists in statute. In looking to federal law and the standards from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, I think I got that acronym correctly, FMCSA, there is a lot of guidance that is put out in terms of what is required to secure specific loads. Some of it is commodity specific, but that is dealing with things that are in interstate commerce, whereas this is also going to cover vehicles that are just traveling within the state of Vermont. If I was driving a trailer to the dump, for example, that was filled with loose materials, this TARP law would apply there. The Department of Motor Vehicles has put out a 2-page pamphlet that I was able to find on the website, and it does mostly follow the FMCSA language. It does include language about the transportation of loose materials and preventing slippage. So I think this would be consistent with guidance that the Department of Motor Vehicles has put out on its own without there being a statute requiring it.
Questions? Senator Kitchell?
Well, it's interesting. In other words, what we're doing is putting in statute something that has been advisory, I guess, relative to the DMV's pamphlet. Is that so? Enforcement. How does that? Can they?
The DMV is with us this morning.
Can they enforce? In other words, this is what they put out as what is required, but it doesn't have the force of law. So are they? Can they enforce this regulate? Has this gone through the regulatory process? If it has, then it has the force of law. So I'm just struggling with what is the what has DMV done? What is the genesis of it, and how does it? What is the nexus between that and putting the language in statute?
Commissioner, are you on with us this morning? Manoli?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I actually, to answer Senator Kitchell's question in response to the flyer that Anthea is talking about, I don't have it in front of me. And so, but I do have, I know, Captain Andrews, are you still with us? And if not, I have Derek Femby, who are the commercial vehicle side, who is now running one of our programs and had to retire. And I'd like actually Derek, if I could, to answer the question, if that's acceptable.
Okay, go right ahead.
Derek? Can you answer Senator Kitchell's question?
Well, would he know that, did it go
There
through
we go.
did it go through the regulatory process, through LCAR? That's one of my questions is, if it went through LCAR as a regulation, maybe Anthea knows it, then it
No.
has the force of law. So that's
Correct.
my first question.
That one I can't answer. I was not able to find it in the Secretary of State's depository of rules that have been adopted through the formal rulemaking process.
Okay, all right, was my first question. Thank you.
And Senator Kitchell. Hi, my name is Derek Fenby, Department of Motor Vehicles Chief of Commercial Operations. Senator Kitchell, what was your question?
Well, I was wondering, obviously this hasn't gone through the rulemaking process. It's an advisory pamphlet or conditions or standards. So if you are out, do you have enforcement power? What do you do with a vehicle like this that does not have is in fact shedding hazardous materials? Can you enforce anything? What do you do? Or is it advisory at this point?
As the statute stands now in Vermont, it has to, whatever is on coming off, first it has to come off your vehicle if your load is not covered. So just being uncovered and driving down the road does not constitute an unsafe operation. It has to actually come off of the vehicle. Once it comes off the vehicle, you have to articulate that whatever came off, whether a stone or sawdust or whatever it might be, constitutes a hazard. If it doesn't constitute a hazard, then there is no violation under our current state statute. If you go to federal motor carrier regulations, as it was stated, it's commodity specific. So first, the vehicle has to fall into the guidelines of a commercial motor vehicle underneath the federal guidelines of 10,001 pounds interstate travel or 26,001 pounds interstate travel for the guidelines to even apply. And once those are applicable, then yes, it's commodity specific as far as what is on that vehicle and how it is secured.
Okay, so the pamphlet that is being cited here, is it broader in a application than what you've just cited for enforcement? And in other words, we need to have this statute to address covering of loads to prevent perhaps unfortunate situations. That's what I'm just trying to understand what we have for guidance relative to what we would put into statute, which would give greater clarity in terms of when enforcement could occur. Because oftentimes, I think this would apply. It could apply to me, right? If I had a trailer next, my son was transporting something, and I don't know it, and
It trash to the dump as it flew off, right?
Yeah. So I guess that's the question: is this would address those kinds of situations, which the motor carrier regulations really don't address.
Senator Perchlik, you had a guest this morning that wanted to testify.
Yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, she's with us. She could just talk about her personal experience.
Okay, go right ahead. It's a good time.
Hi. My name's Lori Bernier. I guess I wanted to start by just giving you a little bit of background information as to why I even have an interest to be here today. I'm one of 18 residents of Graniteville, collectively known as neighbors. We joined together in late 2011 in opposition to the NEMG crusher and asphalt operations. They were cited to locate in the heart of our two Graniteville villages. That's located on the Graniteville Road in the town of Barry. I'm also a lifetime resident of the Upper Graniteville Village and I have been for 57 years. Since 2012, our group collectively participated in the Act 250 processes, as well as any of the A&R technical proceedings, in an attempt to safeguard the residents from the negative impacts that NEMG projects brought to our neighborhood. Our opposition to the projects was not a blanket opposition to the crushing of aggregate or the production of asphalt per se. We recognize the importance of these resources to our state's road systems. The objection was to the siting of the industrial land uses being placed between our two residential villages. So that's basically where my interest lies. And why I'm here today is to suggest the need for stronger TARP laws for commercial trucks, or creating improvements to TARP laws that may already exist, such as in the provision of the VSA 23-1454, which I believe is what has just been mentioned. Our experience is that this law does nothing to protect the residents of the two Graniteville villages from unreasonable impacts from materials falling off passing trucks through the villages, because just as was stated, it's limited. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the characteristics of our village. The two villages have approximately 700 people living throughout the villages. The lower village, which is where most of the trucks pass through, contain a store, a playground, post offices, a senior center, school bus stops, basically, a bike path, a church, a general store, a post office, and they're all stretched along the Graniteville Road, which is the main artery that connects the two villages. The Upper Graniteville Village is home to the Berrytown Forest, which hosts many recreational activities, including the Millstone Trails. Both villages that I described are highly densely populated areas, and described as that. The vast majority of the trucks that haul to the site don't only bring product to just the Washington County area, but to all areas throughout the state. So this brings a lot of traffic through the Lower Graniteville Village, which the company is permitted to have a maximum of 100 loaded trucks per day. So what that means is that there's possibly 200 truck trips resulting in passing through the lower village per day. So one of the concerns of residents has continuously been that the NEMG operation is spilling the aggregate along the roadways from the commercial trucks that frequent the site to purchase product. It occurs down the Graniteville Road. I don't know if this might be a good place to do the pictures, but I'm sure many, if not all of us, has likely experienced a rock being thrown at our windshield and the impact that has. And this is what we're dealing with as we see the aggregate on the roads and experience the aggregate throughout the villages. In the pictures that I've presented, you'll see that there's various sizes of aggregate, various dates, and various locations where these have fallen. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Okay, so it looks like you've got up 819. This basically shows you a location that's just down from the site. Yep. Oh, I guess I don't see. Are you guys seeing the photos?
We saw.
I saw one real quickly, but then I saw it disappear.
Yeah, I think we understand. Yeah.
Okay. So that photo, and there's a couple of continuing after that on the same date. This is basically rocks that we see as a regular occurrence on the roadways through Graniteville, along the
This is,
Granite.
the date on this is 2013.
Yes.
Is that right?
Okay, I guess that's not the one I was seeing. I was seeing 8/19.
No, the year. In other words, this has
Yes.
been an
Yes.
ongoing problem because this
Oh,
is
absolutely. That's why I provided some photos throughout various dates, because this has continued throughout the process that we've gone through from 2011 all the way to date. You'll see pictures, from 2013, and there's even some from 2020. Like I said, this one is, just showing you various rocks on the roadway. I think there's a couple in consecutive order. This, is showing one of the residents' driveways that is adjacent to the road, which is the truck route. You can see some of the stones under his. This is actually his driveway, which is along the truck route. This is what he experiences, on a daily basis.
and none of this would be addressed by the motor carrier requirement then that Derek Fenby was referencing. It sounds like this is there's no applicability here of
Well, I think where the problem lies is that the trucks travel through untarped.
No, I know. I was just trying to say that your situation that you're presenting to us is because the trucks conveying the crushed rock are not subject to any enforcement at this point. It's not a matter that they are subject to the motor carrier requirements, and therefore we need to enforce what's on the books. We need to put some enforcement on the books. That's what I'm just trying to sort out here.
Well, I wouldn't be able to answer that, I guess.
No. It's more, I think that's more a question for the motor vehicle enforcement.
This is language that they would need, the language you're proposing, or Senator Pertzik proposing to address this concern, or?
Yeah, I mean,
if we know the issue, what's the answer? What are we trying to do?
Right. Senator Kitchell had a right, and what the residents on this road have experienced is they see it every day as they're driving on there with either trucks, rocks bouncing off the trucks at their cars, or just littered on the road as they're driving. But they can't, when they call to ask for help for enforcement, I think as the person from DMV said, like, you need to see you need to be there. You, the enforcement person, kind of need to see the rock falling out of the truck, and you have to say, you have to make this determination that there was a safety hazard. We would like just to have this language in there to make it clear what the requirement is, and to increase the chances of an enforcement action if they continue to.
So we do not have any law right now that says you got to cover a load, right? I know it's been talked about over the years. There's nothing on the statute presently.
That's what Anthea could probably is the best answer. What we have now.
Give us something about this.
So my understanding is that there is this statute 1454 subsection A, which has that general prohibition you need to secure loads. And then there are also two statutes, and I believe they're 1126 and 1126A, that address the depositing of glass or other hazards and snow. But again, in terms of what Derek Fenby had said, a lot of that has to do with how do you prove that it wasn't secured unless something actually fell off and landed on the road. This would be a little bit more preemptive in, are you looking to see if there is something covering the load? In terms of enforcement, I certainly can't speak to whether or not this is enforced and what tickets are issued for it. I can tell you that I looked up, none of these statutes have the civil penalty specified in statute, so it defaults to the maximum of $1,000. And I looked up in the Judicial Bureau's waiver penalty chart, just so you can have an understanding of what sort of penalties there are from a waiver penalty standpoint here. And it's $162 for the depositing of glass statute 1126, 76 for the snow one, that's 1126A, and 134 first offense and 162 second or subsequent offense for the 1454 statute that this proposed amendment would apply to.
And I would just also reiterate that what Anthea's research showed is that all our 3 neighboring states have this kind of language that we don't have in Vermont.
Yeah, I looked to Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire in terms of sort of where I got some sample language from.
Do we have any testimony from any law enforcement that would say that this is a good idea or a bad idea? Because I know some of the stone, they fall off because it's overloaded. I mean, it goes over the edges. I don't know if a tarp stops that or not. Certainly some of that stone is not blown off by the wind. A lot of it's just, we've all followed trucks before that were not overloaded, but they're loaded to the maximum. So they drop on the highway. So anybody from enforcement would like to comment on this at this time? How about AOT? I mean, Wanda, any comments?
So I would just like to say to the committee, we did, I have communicated with Senator Perchlik. He may not have seen it yet. So I think, so there's a couple things. DMV enforcement from that side. We don't see having any issues with state statute or putting in the rules that the current statute allows us to do. So in 1454, there is authority that the commissioner may by rule impose design and load security requirements. In the brief research that I've done in the conversations with the team, this rule was never put into place. So that is an option. From the DMV enforcement side, having a state statute would not contradict the federal regulation that you've all been talking about. But I would just share with the committee, I think there should, if we could have some regarding this language on our VTrans side of the house, even though Anthea has put in some exceptions, there are a couple of areas that may be of concern that we should probably vet through. And I don't want to speak for the Highways Division, on the language. So other states do have this. There is statute out there. There are guidelines for this. So it would not be in opposition of the federal regulations. I think that we need to look at the impact and maybe the impact on some of the municipalities, the way we're interpreting the language, and really defining what is secured tarping and what that means, Senator Perchlik.
You have the power to do it yourself. The commissioner can do this if you so choose.
So in 1454, we have the authority to write rules to do this. And based on the quick research and conversations with Anthea, that there is no rule specific to this at this time.
Do we want to do a little more digging into this before we pass a decision today, or how do we want to handle this? Senator Perchlik, you got any thoughts about this? Do we want to rush into something, or we want to give it a little more thought?
Well, yeah, I can work with the commissioner on some languages. I quickly saw her email concerned about requiring tarps, but I want to be clear that the language that Anthea came up with doesn't require tarps if the stuff in the truck is secured in a way that it's not going to fall out. So it doesn't say everybody has to have a tarp. I could see why you would have a concern if that was the requirement. That's not what the language says. So I think we could continue to work on that.
Okay,
That's clear.
Seeing it's the first time today we've had that discussion, let's give it a little time to digest, and you can continue to work on it.
And
Thank you.
I don't know.
Senator Kitchell?
Yeah, so the plan would be to have further discussion, but Senator Perch, like your desire would be to have this as part of our DMV bill.
Yeah, if we could do that, I thought that would be the easiest place to put it. And I don't know if Lori has any other last comment. We kind of put off there.
I do. I think it's very important just simply because you went through the pictures quickly, but in explaining some of those pictures, you saw the size, the magnitude of the size of some of those rocks. If a pedestrian, it causes a great concern to like pedestrians walking through the villages. If you get one of those rocks, like I said, you all experienced likely have experienced the impact of a rock hitting your window. I mean, just imagine if one of those, where it was flown from a truck passing by into a pedestrian. Our villages have we have one small section that has sidewalks, but otherwise there's nothing. There's no shoulders. So residents are forced to walk within those lanes. There's no protection whatsoever. And then as far as the rocks going on somebody's property, I think that's a little bit of an invasion of their property, and possibly causing damage to some of the areas of their property. I'm not an authority on any of the regulations, but I will mention that my husband has a commercial license for a CDL. He does not drive at the moment. He has a different job. But in speaking to him about this, I hear a lot of you questioning on how this would affect certain types of trucks, like little haulers to the garbage and stuff. From what he has stated to me, and like I said, that doesn't mean it's fact. When you place a law like this in the way that Senator Perchlik is suggesting, it would only affect those trucks that have a DOT number. So I think that it would safeguard, like the simple truck maybe going to the dump or whatever. But again, those, I don't have the factual information on that. But I believe most good businesses work in our state and try to be a beneficial part of our state. And I think if you give them a tool like a TARP law, and assure that they're not overloading trucks and whatnot and securing them, I mean, you're almost resolving the issue just by giving them that tool. Because there was some discussion of enforcement.
Okay.
I don't even think that. I think by just giving them the tool of the TARP and using it and implementing it, you're almost solving the issue with that alone.
Okay, we'll continue after we get some more information. Okay, with that, I think we'll end that discussion. What's next? Anthea, you have more to continue on?
Can I have one more question? Can I be allowed to send in some written information that may outline a little bit more detail of our
Just
situation?
pass them on to Senator Perchlik, and
Okay.
he will work on it. Okay, Anthea, anything else?
Nothing else from me this morning.
Okay. Liz, where are we next?
You are done.
We're done?
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, Senator Kitchell.
Yeah, I know that the issue around carbon reduction and transportation being 40% or more than 40% is of interest to our colleagues in natural resources. And I was looking at the agenda on Friday. We're having an update on EVs from, I think at Riley. Is it Riley, Ellen? Coming in from, is it
Riley
Riley?
is coming in, yeah, on
Yeah.
Thursday.
Oh, not Friday. Well, I don't even know what day it is anymore. I don't know whether they could fit it in their schedule, but I was thinking sometimes we've discovered that multiple committees are taking the same testimony from the same people. And I was thinking that if we were doing that, maybe we could just invite the Natural Resources Committee, which is a morning committee, to hear that update that we would get on Thursday. So that was my request to the chair is, would that be,
What issue is this again, Jane? What issue is this?
This is the EV, the electric vehicle update that we're getting from Riley Allen of Public Service Department. And then we've got obviously the Agency of Natural Resources that is working on their whole climate change agenda. And so I was thinking that when we have people coming in, the more we can have the benefit of coming and talking, instead of individually, if we can combine forces with updates, it's in this Zoom environment, it's kind of helpful.
Everybody all right with that? Okay, Liz, why don't we just go off Zoom and we have a little conversation with the committee?